Greetings to those of you who are watching. My name is Bernard Scott. I'm the head coordinator of an organization known as the Mid-South Intellectual Endeavors. Some time ago, I posted a video. It was actually filmed on May 12th, 2012. It was labeled, Does God Really Exist? I've got some comments back from it, and it kind of goes along with a lot of other videos that I've posted, saying something to the effect of where they're good conferences, but they're a bit lengthy. And so what I plan to have done, what I plan to do in this webcast is to give a basic overall view of it, show some of the highlights and the concerns that I personally have, because even during the conference at the end, a few of the panel members were asking me, my opinion about it, what did I get out of it. And at the time I was pretty much mentally drained, so I've had time to come back, look at the video, and think about it, and give some of my concerns about it. I'm not trying to debunk anybody or anything that anybody said, but I do want to give my personal opinion on a lot of things. First thing I want to go over, I gave a short introduction to some of the panel members, but I never did give anybody a little description of myself. Of course, my name is Bernard Scott, as I said. I'm a student at the University of Memphis. My major is religion and society with a minor in philosophy. A little bit about my religious history. As most people here in the South, I was raised as a Christian. The exact denomination of Christianity, I'm not exactly sure, even if we had one. I know that eventually when I was about 14, I would say, somewhere when I was a teenager, I wouldn't say converted, but we belonged to a Methodist church, mostly because of the common nature of the Methodist church. My mother believed that in order to, or even if we gained some type of spiritual essence through God or Jesus, there was no need for jumping up and down, hooping and hollering, flipping, doing all of those types of things. So we were looking for a church that's very calm-natured and very sophisticated, so we found one with the Methodist church that we found in my hometown. Sometime later, after I got back from the Iraqi war and I was through with my military obligation, I came back to my hometown, and I'll be going into this more in detail later, but I joined an organization known as the Nation of Islam, and I was a full-fledged member of the Nation of Islam for about 2 years. Sometime after that, I made a decision to go to a more orthodox branch of Islam. And sometime later after that, maybe about another 2 or 3 years, I made a decision to my current religious view, I would say, which would pretty much be agnosticism. I'll get into that a little bit later. There are 2 guests, Dr. Kenny Arnett and A.C. Curtis, and A.C. Curtis has an organization known as Express Missions International. The first slide that I had, I asked my panel members pretty much is to express any concerns they have with their belief system, or if they were an atheist, any plausible theories that you have that might be plausible toward the existence of God. A.C. Curtis, when I asked him, he started off by giving a sort of intelligent design argument toward the existence of God. And he brings out a power drill, and he says, well, you can obviously tell that this has a design and has a purpose, so you can tell that the universe has a purpose. Well, in my opinion, there's a big difference between a piece of technology and the natural world. Of course, you can tell the drill even has a name on it. It says made by Black & Decker or whatever company it was made by. But in the natural world, there have been plenty of very plausible scientific explanations that have said that the universe was not so much intelligently designed, but eventually came to be through years and years of an evolutionary process. I mean, millions and billions of years, or with the universe as a whole, billions of years. So it slowly progressed into the shape that it is in now. It would be kind of miraculous if, according to like what the Judeo-Christian Bible says, it was created in 6 days. Well, there's just no evidence that plausible evidence that suggests that the Earth was, or the entire universe was made in 6 24-hour periods. I haven't seen. You guys post a comment if you have some evidence that can further prove this, but I have personally not seen this. The next slide goes into the definition of theist, atheist, and agnostic. Dr. Arnett brings up a good point, and I agree with him. These terms are kind of ambiguous, and they're relative towards your culture and the time period in which it's said. The 1st century A.D., Nero had proclaimed himself to be God, and he said that you Christians who aren't worshiping me, you guys are atheists. And the Christians said, no, you're atheists. You don't believe in our God. So it can be a little ambiguous. I know that nowadays, if a person says they're an atheist, I see that they're pretty much referring to a belief. They don't have a belief in the Judeo-Christian Islamic God. But that's not the only ideal of God that's out there right now. There are various religions with various ideals of not even personified deities. So when I use the term gods or God, I'm referring to a personified deity. But there are other definitions of gods of a nature of a higher power or what have you that exceed the Judeo-Christian Islamic view. So it all depends on what you, how you personally define these terms. Like I said, I guess I'll have to, if somebody boils it down and says, well, what do you call yourself? I guess I'll have to be an agnostic, which agnostic, it could mean unsure. I'm not exactly sure, but I guess that's the way I'll label it, you know. I'm not saying that any God does exist or doesn't exist. I just haven't seen any definitive proof myself. It seems a lot of the evidence that people give toward the existence of one God, high power, can equally go toward another God or high power. We'll get into that more lately. And then we got into, the next slide was gods, gods, and goddesses. I gave 4 basic categories: monotheism, polytheism, pantheism, and henotheism. Of course, monotheism, the belief in one God; polytheism, belief in multiple gods; pantheism is it's like saying that we're all part of God. You know, everything's inside of God. God isn't separate over here, and then he has a creation over here. Everything is together. Everything's a part of God. Henotheism pretty much says that there's one supreme God, but there's lesser gods that are there as well. It's a little bit different than polytheism, because polytheism, even though you may have a head god like Zeus, they can all branch together and try to take on Zeus and possibly win. With henotheism, that's not the case. You have that head god and you have subordinate gods for whatever reason. So it's a little bit different than polytheism. I did express my concern with Christianity in the polytheistic nature, because you have this God and you have subordinate angels or what have you who are supposedly work for God and do all these things and that things. I kind of see that, well, the thing about it is, in Greek mythology you have Zeus and you have Hermes, who is a messenger god with wings or what have you, and he flies around delivering messages toward mankind or what have you. They consider that polytheism, but Christianity and Judaism is the same way. You have God and you have these winged creatures called angels who deliver messages and do things for God as well, but that's considered a monotheistic belief. A lot of people are actually considering it to be henotheistic, which I can see where they get that from. Now, AC gave a defense for the Trinitarian theory. He said, well, he can be a dad, a husband, and a son to his mother. Well, that's kind of different when you're speaking of titles, because, yes, you can be 3 titles at once, but you can't be 3 different people at once. You see what I'm saying? God, well, in the Bible, God, there's a distinction between Jesus and God. When Jesus is on the cross and saying, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do, was he talking to himself? He was praying to God to let that burden be lifted from him when the Roman soldiers were finna come and capture him or what have you, and he prays to God all the time. I mean, there's a clear distinction between God, so it doesn't seem like there are three different people, or he's all one person, but, you know, it seems like he's talking to himself pretty much. I don't know. You guys leave a comment about that. I'm going to leave that open. Mr. Curtis says that he had a personal relationship. And I'm not picking on Mr. Curtis, but I've heard this from many Christians. And they will say, well, you know, I had a personal revelation while certain things were going wrong. So I had this personal revelation, and that's how I know that Jesus is the true God or what have you. But I've interviewed and talked with a lot of individuals from many different religious organizations, and we'll get into this later. It's a list of things where the people have given me over the time that says, well, my religion is authentic. Mr. Curtis did say that pretty much he was in an intoxicated state. He was drunk, and Jesus came to him while he was drunk, and he sobered him up. I really hate to debunk anybody's, and I'm not trying to debunk, I'm just giving probably another plausible explanation. And I really hate to do that because people are so excited, and it gives them purpose. But for the sake of this, you know, I have to speak my opinion about this. Well, he says that he took an intoxicating substance, and while he was under the influence of this intoxicating substance, he saw something that people don't normally see. So, not ridiculing him or anything, but, you know, the Native Americans all the time, and certain other religious groups in the past, said that they get their spiritual essence through other intoxicating substances, whether it's mushrooms or marijuana or what have you. A lot of people will reject that and call that ridiculous, but if an individual, usually from the Christian faith, were to say that they had a revelation and saw God through something like that, then they would immediately accept it. And he said that he immediately sobered up. Well, the thing about it is, I've watched a lot of police videos, and a lot of people who got pulled over for a DUI, they would swear up and down that they're not drunk. They would swear up and down that they were not swerving. They would swear that the policeman just had some bias to him and said that he was drunk. So, it could be. But let's go on to the next one. He claims that a lot of belief systems are personal, but they do proclaim you must believe. And he says with Christians say, I will die for my faith, but organizations like the Muslim religion, rather, will say, you will die for my faith. I'm going to leave that up to you guys to comment on. I'm going to go through these really quick because I have a lot of things to cover. Mr. Curtis says, most of the battles and slaughters in Christianity came through the Catholic Church. Because I had said, I basically gave a comment that European history is riddled, and I'm not being racist or anything, but I'm just saying, for one example, European history, as far as Christianity, has had many battles that I've learned through my Western civilizations history class, that Christian organizations in Europe have been fighting each other left and right for a long time. And he proclaims that, well, those are just the Catholic churches, and they started a lot of stuff. So, you guys leave a comment on that. Let's see. And he says that, yes, Christianity has had a history of evil, persecution, and things of that nature. But he says that if you look at the good that Christianity has done worldwide, the good will outweigh the bad. Okay. Next slide, about 38 minutes in, we talked about the perfected nature of God, his omnipotence, omniscience, omnibenevolence, omnipresence, immutable, impassible. One of the ones I forgot to add, and I think this goes along with that, is his altruistic nature, so to speak. Dr. Arnett rejected most of these characteristics, so to speak. He even quotes one passage in the Bible that says, the Lord changed his mind, and it's in Exodus 32:14. One of the audience members named Sean says that scriptures like these are taken out of context. I don't personally see how you can do it when you have a direct quote, that says God changed his mind. I just don't see. And of course, the next slide I said, the perfected nature of God is true. The omnipotence, omniscience, omnibenevolence, or whatever. Why is there so much suffering in the world? And I'm not including human intervention, because you can always say free will. But that's not what I'm including in this. I'm speaking of natural disasters and things of that nature. And I brought up a slide that it was a map of the United States, and it shows the Bible Belt. The part that was shaded was the Bible Belt. And the same area that was shaded is showing, the part where there's a lot of tornadoes and what have you in these areas. So, because I've heard of one Christian pastor, I'm not exactly sure who it was, that said these hurricanes and the natural disasters that were happening in Haiti and Louisiana, they are happening because these individuals were doing a lot of things God didn't like. They weren't worshiping Jesus. They were worshiping their voodoo gods or what have you. That's why these disasters happened. So it pretty much says that if God doesn't like what you're doing, he's going to send natural disasters to destroy your area. Well, it seems in that picture that I showed that it's the same way with Christianity. The predominantly Christian areas of the United States are the one hit with more hurricanes and stuff. So according to that logic, God shouldn't like Christianity either. Dr. Arnett disagreed with my definition that evil includes natural disasters. He said that natural disasters are, of course, being redundant, natural and have nothing to do with God. Mr. Curtis agrees. But I would disagree with both of these individuals that God is supposed to be all-knowing, all-powerful, all-wise, all this and that. I was reading a passage in the Qur'an that said, not a leaf falls in the forest without God knowing. So God knows everything, he sees all, or what have you. So I don't see how it could be natural when God controls everything. And he has preordained everything. So if these tornadoes happen, they happen, and they say everything happens for a reason, I've heard that left and right with many of the Judeo-Christian Islamic views. Mr. Curtis also said this is an effect of original sin. He said God is not the author of evil. I'll leave that to you guys to comment on. I asked a question about 58 minutes into the conference. Wouldn't this original sin punishment contradict his benevolent nature? Because I wasn't there. I didn't sin. So why should I be held accountable for something that Adam did? Just eating a mundane piece of fruit. And of course he said, well, Jesus died for our sins and everything like that. So you guys comment on that. One of our guest members, Sean, he says that evil exists because we constantly sin, sort of like the same thing I just said. It's almost like God ignores the chance to save us from suffering because we're making mistakes. And I don't see how he can be altruistic and benevolent with that type of attitude. It's just not consistent to me. About an hour and 8 minutes in, I gave quite a long list of things that every religion uses to support their religion. Some of them include, my religion is the only true religion because the Holy Scriptures in my religion say it is. It's kind of like circular logic, If you say, well, how do I know God exists? Well, because the Bible says so. Well, how can I trust the Bible? Because it's the Word of God. It's kind of circular in nature. The Scriptures in my faith are authentic because one of the predictions, it says predictions and things are coming true. Eyewitness accounts. My Bible has no contradictions. Other religious scriptures have tons of them, but mine has no contradictions. And if you find any, it's only because you're misinterpreting it. We have scientific evidence that supports my religion. And I'm speaking outside the Judeo-Christian Islamic religions. And you have some new religions that are popping up there using these excuses. uniqueness. My religious scripture is my religion or religious scriptures are unique. Well, of course, if they were the same, then it'd be the same religion. Just how I feel. They say other religions are just copycats of other religions that came before them. I'm going to do a separate webcast about that later. I was suddenly transformed when I entered my religion. I heard A.C. Curtis saying things of that nature. Miracle stories of ordinary people in my religion receiving supernatural blessings. I've heard of people who were in hardships and all of these religions, even my Hindu community I've talked to, saying, well, they were poor and they didn't know where their next meal was coming from, what have you, and something miraculous came after they prayed to their individual God. I've been taught that my religion is true, and if you're saying that what I said is false, are you saying that my parents were wrong? It's kind of like a disrespect to their parents and their culture. Other religions is infested with terrorists and sinners. Mine doesn't. From what I've known, even there have been some members even in the Buddhist community that have done some things. And they're supposed to be, from my understanding, one of the more altruistic religions there are. My religion is the largest, fastest growing, most diverse, oldest religion, or it was the religion that came first in the world. This proves my religion is the authentic one. They might have a creation story and says, see, my religion says when the universe was formed, there was my God forming the religion. My religion has millions and billions of followers, including doctors, lawyers, and other highly educated people. With this level of intelligence, they can't all be wrong. Like I said, even in the Hindu community, I've known plenty of doctors and lawyers that practice the Hindu faith, so Christians and Muslims and Jews and a lot of intelligent individuals. Let's continue on. Let's see where I was. Let me see. Oh yeah. Mr. Curtis says that he studied several religions and none of them gave him a spiritual essence. I would like to bring up a point that I've heard many people will say that they've studied all of the religions there are. They studied Christianity, they studied Muslim, which is actually Islam, but they call it Muslim. I've studied Muslim, I've studied Hinduism, I've studied Buddhism. So I've studied all the religions, and I've found out that my religion is the only true religion. That is absolutely impossible. People think that there's only maybe 4 or 6 religions, or if they've been to some theological school, they say, well, there's about 12 religions that have ever existed in the world, and I studied them all, so I know that this is the only religion. That is absolutely impossible. There have been hundreds of thousands of distinct religions, and not speaking of denominations inside of each religion, but there have been hundreds of thousands of religions that have existed. It is virtually impossible for them to study them all. Even if they wanted to say that I've studied Hinduism, that is absolutely impossible. The Hindus have scriptures called the Vedas, and there are tons and tons of them. And there are Hindus who have been trying to study all of these texts and memorize them and understand them ever since they've been born. And they have probably got a quarter way through it by the time they're 60 or something like that. So to say that one went to school, theological school, and they've gone to college and they've studied for 8 years or so, and they've received their master's degree or their doctorate degree, and they've studied Hinduism by itself, is an absolutely impossible statement to say. So I don't see how anybody can say, well, I've studied all religions and I found out that Christianity or Islam or Judaism is the best one, because you haven't studied them all. It is absolutely impossible to study them all. Mr. Curtis says, as far as contradictions you find in the Bible, it doesn't matter because you find contradictions when you drive down the street. And I noticed this in the conference, they don't have a good understanding. The individuals, and not to demean them, but a lot of them didn't have a good understanding of the law of non-contradiction. It says that 2 things that are totally opposite cannot exist at the same time. Either I'm talking to you on the camera or I'm not talking to you on the camera. It can't be both. So to say, well, because there's a couch right here in the wall, and those are 2 contradictions and they're existing at the same time. No, either the couch is here, or either I'm sitting on the couch or I'm not sitting on the couch. It says that 2 things that are totally opposite cannot exist at the same time. But the Bible, from my understanding, and I'm going to give a list and I'm going to give a link down here that shows a lot of contradictions that we find just in the Bible or in the Qur'an. The Bible, for instance, will say X number of people were fighting in this battle, and then it says in a later scripture, maybe 10,000 people were fighting in this battle. Then later on it says million people were fighting in this battle. And then you may have one scripture that says Jesus saying, I and the Father are one, and then it'll say the Father is greater than me. And of course, you know, people will use metaphors and similes to console these indifferences. But of course, if another religion would use these same tactics, similes, and metaphors, then they would say that they're just using excuses. So, excuse me for one moment. And let's see, let's go on. We get into the next slide that said, well, actually, I'm kind of skipping one. Basically, he was saying that there's this group of individuals he came across. Mr. Curtis said that he came across 10 coexist people. This is a new religious movement, I would say, or new philosophy that's saying pretty much all the religions. I'm not exactly true myself, so I may be completely wrong, but it's saying that all the religions could live peacefully. I'm not sure if they're saying that all religions are partially true or something of that nature. I haven't really done studying into the movement, but he was saying that he spoke to 10 of them, and all of them have been bashing Christianity. Well, and he was basically saying that's not a true Christian if they bash other religions, and it would be better if the coexist people were saying that if Christians was just let go of what they believe, this world would be a better place. But Christians do that all the time. They will say, well, if everybody starts worshiping Jesus, then the whole world will be a better place as well. So Christians do the exact same thing, by my opinion. And he was also saying something to the fact of a true Christian doesn't bash people. To my opinion, from reading the Gospels and the Bible itself, Jesus bashes the Pharisees left and right and other people for believing the wrong way. Doesn't matter what his reason is, but he still does a lot of bashing. You know, he doesn't take an altruistic approach, but he starts off by saying, what you guys are doing are wrong, and you're trying to say I'm doing wrong, but you guys are doing more wrong than what I'm doing. And of course, God in the Old Testament, he starts a lot of wars. He tells a lot of his followers, Joshua, Moses, what have you, that you guys need to form, yes, I'm giving you this revelation, and you guys need to form armies and go off and kill these people. When you get there, I want you to kill everybody, the women, the children, the livestock, everybody. So it's even worse than bashing. It's absolute murder. And to me, my opinion, wouldn't that be a terrorist act, so to speak? You guys please comment on these things that I'm speaking about. One of the last slides that I had was faith and whether it's a universal concept. Dr. Arnett, I have to disagree with him, says that even scientists have faith in their theories. I guess we have to get a definition of faith, because basically scientists, it's not exactly faith, especially as far as, especially in the way the blind faith concept that religions have. Scientists believe that a certain idea is plausible because of a lot of evidence that has already been definitively established. Another difference between scientists and religious people, even with the thing of faith, if scientists think something is the case, even though I have a lot of evidence and they're being found wrong, scientists will say, well, no, I'm sorry. We thought this was the case, but we found out it isn't. So we would take away what we said before. With religious people, it doesn't matter. They already say this is the truth, and we're going to find ways to support what we believe. And I'm going to bring this up later, but I guess I'll bring it up now. I saw a special on the History Channel where this guy was saying something about Nostradamus, people who believe in Nostradamus' prediction. He said it's just like people drawing a dot on the wall and drawing circles around it, you know, as far as a bullseye. Or they throw a dart on the wall and then they draw the bullseye around it. And that's what I've seen as far as religious people. They will already accept that something is the truth, and they'll find evidence to try to support it, which should be the other way around. You should take a lot of evidence and come to a conclusion, not have the conclusion and then find evidence to support it. Let's see. Faith can go anyway. If I say, well, I can have faith, me personally, that even though the Judeo-Christian God may be true and I don't believe in him fully, I can say, well, I have faith that he will let me into heaven, knowing that he is truly altruistic. He will let me into heaven even though I never believed in him or what have you. Of course, there was another thing where Mr. Curtis said, what would happen if everybody had the same experience he had? Well, of course, that would be great. And my question, I guess, would be, why hasn't he done it? He has the power to do so. So why hasn't he done it already? Mr. Curtis claims that there's a process for every other religion. Christianity isn't one of those things. With other religions, you have to go on pilgrimage. And he says even in Hinduism, you have to live many lifetimes and recite the own millions of lifetimes. You guys please leave a comment about that. Mr. Curtis says that Christianity is the only religion that has changed him on the dime. So that's, right there on the spot. It wasn't a progressive state. He changed it right then and there. So he knows that's the true religion. Well, like I said in the video, the same thing with me and the Nation of Islam. Once I decided to join the Nation of Islam, when I got back from Iraq, I was doing a lot more smoking than what I used to, with cigarettes and marijuana. I was doing a lot more drinking and things of that nature. When I joined the Nation of Islam, all that stopped right there on the dime. So I guess by that standard, he would say I need to rejoin the Nation of Islam, even though that would be contrary to what he believes. One of the audience members, Sean, said that people who don't believe in God, atheists, have faith that there is no God. I totally disagree with that. Faith is basically saying that I have a strong feeling and I'm going to hold to or I'm going to hope that there is what I think is true. I don't think that's the way with a lot of atheists. They will say that, well, there's no evidence to support what you proclaim. So that's why I don't believe in it. I don't believe they have faith, so to speak, and hope that there is no God. Sean also said, faith is the evidence of the things that are not seen. This is in the Bible. Paul quotes this. Isn't that, it's kind of contradictory. If you say faith is the evidence, well, that's contrary to the thing of evidence, because evidence deals with things that are physical proofs. So you can't say, well, faith is the evidence of things. I know there's probably some deeper spiritual meaning. Please comment on that. Okay, we're going to go on because I know I'm running over time, and I'm probably going to be, this webcast is going to be long as the conference themselves. The audience member, Sean, says, where did the law of non-contradiction come from? He's meaning that it came from man, so that's why things in the Bible may seem contrary, but he's basically saying, from what I'm understanding, is it came from man, so it could be, and man is fallible, so he could have created a fallible concept for us to follow. So he also says that what makes it valid, I would say to Mr. Sean that what makes it valid is common sense. If the law of non-contradiction doesn't apply, then like I was telling him before, somebody can murder somebody's mother and they could find the person and there could be DNA all over that person. They could drop their wallet right beside the body, and they could have eyewitness accounts. They could have cameras videotaping him doing the crime. But he could both be innocent and guilty at the same time. He could say, yes, I did it, and I didn't do it at the same time. It can make perfect sense since there is no law of non-contradiction. So he could say, well, we can't definitively prove that you did it because there's also evidence that you didn't do it, which, you know, is because the law of contradiction makes no sense. So you guys comment on that. But bringing up the thing with personal experience, I think that 9/11 was one of the worst tragedies that America has ever faced. Actually, it's the worst tragedy probably that America has ever faced. But the Taliban had faith. The Taliban had probably had personal experience. They've had, you know, their respect of their elders and mothers and relatives that said that, you know, this is the true religion, this is the true way, this is a true ideal, we really need to do this, God supports this. So all the things that Christians are supporting for their religion, I mean, the Taliban can use the same thing. Not saying that everybody should join the Taliban. What I'm saying is it's the same criteria over and over again. And you can't say, well, the Taliban is doing violent things and killing. Well, the Old Testament, the God of the Old Testament, well, I'm not going to say the Old Testament, but God in the Bible, he proclaims a lot of wars. Like I said before, he tells Moses, Aaron, all these people to get together, armies, destroy these people because they're either practicing, they're not believing in the Judeo-Christian God, or they're practicing things that he condemns immoral. And that's one of the things the Taliban said, is that America's doing a lot of immoral stuff. They let their women walk around on television in bikinis and shaking their butts on the videos. So, you know, they're doing a lot of immoral stuff, so we need to attack America for this. So they're doing the same thing that the Judeo-Christian God has been telling his prophets to do. Let's see. Personal experience. Okay. Even in an example I use in the book of 2 Kings, chapter 2, verse 23, God sends... This supposedly altruistic God sends bears to kill these little children just because they make fun of a bald man. Now, some people have given an apologetic saying, well, it says youths, and because people were living older back then in those days, maybe hundreds of years, a youth could be somebody 23 or 25 years old, 30 years old. Well, it still doesn't make it that much better, because he's sending people, he's sending people to, sending bears to kill people simply because of the fact that he's making fun of their bald head. I don't see how that can be altruistic. I'm skipping a lot of things, you guys. I expressed the fact of why doesn't God just come down here in person, you know, instead of having all these religions fight each other, and we have to spend our whole time reading religious scripture and using deductive reasoning and relying on faith, which anybody can use. And he says pretty much he did come down in the form of Jesus. From my knowledge, there's no physical evidence to prove that whatsoever. Outside of the Bible, there's really no physical evidence. You have Josephus. He's one of the ones, but it's very vague. And a lot of Josephus' scriptures have been found to be fraudulent. The scriptures have been, certain passages of Josephus have been taken out and put in. And he was really, from my research, he is the only historian during that time who documents Jesus. And actually, he wasn't there during the time of Jesus, because Jesus supposedly died around 3540 CE, which was around the time when Josephus was born. So he had to rely on stories from people who heard stories. So, plus, like I said to Mr. Curtis before, there are plenty of stories of people who came before Jesus, Krishna, Osiris, all of these people who, even the Buddha himself, Siddhartha Gautama, if I'm pronouncing his name right, who were sons of gods, or gods that came down in the form of humans, who sacrificed themselves for the sake of mankind, Hercules in this example as well. And they suffered and died for our sake, and later on they were given certain, responsibilities or certain authorities over mankind. Some of them were born to virgin or pure women. They all did miracles and things of this nature. The list goes on. Let's see. One of the audience members named Andy, he says, faith is more of a Christian thing. He said that other religions may have a concept of this, but it's more of a Christian thing. And AC, Curtis, he confirms this, and he says, well, that's great, because this makes a person a better person, because it takes a special type of person to believe in something which there is no evidence. Well, yeah, it could, but it could also make a person a fool, couldn't it? If somebody comes to your door and says, I have this stock that I want you to invest in, and it's really doing good right now, and I give me the cash for it right now, and I invest in it for you. And saying, well, you don't have to get on your laptop and look it up or anything like that, doing the research. Just have faith that I'm telling you the truth. I mean, that's blind faith. I don't know, you guys comment on that as well. Okay, I already went over the bashing thing. A lot of people will ask me in the end, what would it take for me to accept the Judeo-Christian Islamic God? Well, one of the concepts is God that is omnipotent. That means he knows everything. The first thing I ask, if he's truly omnipotent and he knows everything, he would already know what would convert me. So being that he hasn't converted me yet, he either doesn't know what would convert me, or he does know and he's not doing it, which would not make him benevolent. He's playing some type of games or something, by my opinion. Many people would say, well, he's probably doing it, but you're not catching it. Well, that would further prove that he's not omnipotent, because God wouldn't play the whole trial and error thing. Well, let me try this. Oh, man, he didn't catch it. Let me try something else. Oh, he's still not catching it. Well, he would already know what I'm catching, because he's supposed to know me. He created me, so he should know me better than I know myself. Mr. Curtis says, as far as, I think that our audience member, Andy, was the first one to bring up that he would consider me a seeker, and he was like, well, he hopes... Mr. Curtis said he hopes I find what I'm looking for. Well, and he also says that, you know, as far as the seeking, what would be the purpose in seeking? And he refers to it as a linear journey. Well, the way I see it, that this is an endless universe, endless possibilities. There isn't a linear path. Like, you find this path and you sit there and you find it. It seems kind of, I don't know, it seems kind of boring, I guess will be the word, that if you have a linear path such as Christianity and you get to this path and you find it, well, what then? There's nothing else. I like the term to think that this is an endless universe and there's many possibilities in many different directions. And if you find one path, it opens up a million other paths. So it seems that it would be a lot more exciting of an existence if there was more than one path. I also brought up the fact that why don't we, he brought up the book of First Kings, where Elijah is getting before the worshippers of Baal and they build altars, and long story short, the worshippers of Baal couldn't get the altar to burn, and Elijah could just by praying peacefully. And I brought up the question, well, why don't we just do that, you know, instead of arguing back and forth on what's the true religion? Why don't we just build altars and see which one burns? And that's the way God would show us that that's true religion. And he brought up the statement, what would make me happier, a sudden miracle from God, or somebody coming in a calm nature just saying, you know, just calm down, God exists, and this and this and that and that. What will make me happier? The revelation, the miracle of the altar burning, because it will stop a lot of arguing and fussing and fighting, and it'd be definitive. And being that we would know what's the true religion, then we can get on, okay, well, what do I need to do? What don't I need to do? Or what have you? Oh, he also brings up the Pascal's wager thing, so to speak, Mr. Curtis does. And he says, yeah, you guys, other religions could be true, but what if I'm right? You guys have a lot to lose if I'm correct and you guys are wrong. Well, that's only if we totally accept his religious ideal that there's a God and he wants you to do this and he wants you to do this, and if you don't do it during your lifetime, you're going to stand before God and he's going to send you down to hell or whatever. The whole Pascal's wager thing basically goes like this. He says that it is in our best interest to believe in God because let's just say he doesn't exist and we spend our whole existence worshiping him and doing all these things, we've lost nothing. But if he does exist and we haven't spent our lives worshiping him, we're in trouble when we get before God on Judgment Day. several things wrong with this. Number one, he's saying that what if he doesn't exist and we spend our whole lives worshiping, we've lost nothing. We've lost a lot of things, because actually we've lost more, because if God doesn't exist and we spend our whole life worshiping him and doing things of this nature, then we've spent our whole life. No religion just says believe and just that. There's 101 things that religions say you must do and not do. Even going to church and giving money to the church for different things. We wasted our time, money, effort, 101 things if he didn't exist in the first place. The second part of it says that, but if he does exist and we don't spend our lives worshiping him, we're going to be in trouble on Judgment Day for not believing in him. Well, that's just from the certain Christian perspectives. Not all Christian perspectives say this. There are even Christian organizations that say that everybody's going to heaven. There are some Christian organizations that say Jesus will be lenient on certain people if they do certain things. So, that's not exactly across the board, even with Christianity. Then you have to equate for other religions as well, who, don't even have a concept of the afterlife. Some of them have a concept of the afterlife that says, well, it's different dimensions that you may go to or what have you. So it's just not feasible. My wife brought up a good question. She said that it sounds to her that the individuals were trying to get me to pretty much settle and just go ahead and accept Christianity. It does kind of seem like that, because it's pretty much they're saying, well, just go ahead and trust God and go ahead and believe in Christianity and accept God. And I think the audience member Sean was saying that as well, is that you have to trust in the Lord and go ahead and believe in him. And once you believe in him, you'll find evidence. Well, that's the whole bullseye thing that I was telling you about, where you throw a dart and you draw circles around that. Well, if you've already accepted that that's the truth, anything that you find could be evidence. So I can say, well, if Zeus exists, give me a sign right now. Then, my phone could ring, or I could hear a car horn blowing or whatever, and I could accept that as evidence, because I've already accepted that is already true. So it's kind of the reverse method of doing something. So, AC says already, Mr. Curtis, he said, at what point does the seeking have a purpose? I think the purpose is already to seek. I went over that about the purpose of seeking earlier. Let me see. A statement was made once again, made to the effect of that this conference could have been my step toward Christianity. God could have sent these people, and I was supposed to listen to them, and I was supposed to accept Christianity. Once again, like I said, it could have been the case that this conference was designed so they could see that Christianity doesn't make sense. Or it could be the reason why they were there is because they needed to see the conference again and see a lot of things, inconsistencies in what they're saying, or they need to watch this particular webcast right here and notice that they need to convert from Christianity or accept a more agnostic viewpoint, because there may be a larger picture as far as what's going on in the universe or our existence. So it can go the other way around. Pretty much that's it. What I got from this, I'm even more agnostic than ever now. Things could go either way. A lot of the things in which the Christian individuals were saying were proofs toward their religion. I see it with other religions as well. As of right now, I don't see any definitive proof that switches toward any religion itself. Like I said, I'm open-minded. I'm not saying anything against Christianity. But these were the only religious people that were there at that time. So I'm not picking on Christianity. We were supposed to have some other individuals from the Islamic group and some other coexist type people, but they couldn't make it for unforeseen reasons. So I'm not picking on Christianity. But I will say that I really enjoyed my panel members. I enjoyed the conference itself. And I thank you all for watching, whatever you guys are watching on YouTube or Facebook or what have you. I really appreciate you guys watching, and